5:27 local time, the Persian Gulf, day 30. Right now, as you're watching this, roughly 150 freight ships are sitting dead in the water at one of the most critical choke points on the planet. Oil tankers, LNG carriers, container ships, all of them stalled, all of them waiting. Another day, the Strait of Hormuz remains closed. Not delayed, not partially restricted, closed, effectively shut down since March 4, 2026, when the IRGC declared the strait off limits to foreign shipping following US and Israeli airstrikes on Iran. 20% of the world's oil supply, 20% of the world's liquefied natural gas gone. And the United States, operating the most powerful navy ever assembled, is struggling to reopen it. And here's why. The answer isn't more destroyers, more carrier strike groups, or more air power. The answer might be Marines, thousands of them aboard amphibious assault ships already steaming toward the Gulf. Here's what they're going to have to do. The Strait of Hormuz sits between Iran to the north and Oman and the UAE to the south. At its narrowest point, it is 21 miles wide, 34 kilometers. For context, that is roughly the distance from downtown Manhattan to the New Jersey Turnpike, but the actual navigable shipping lanes inside that gap are a fraction of that total width. 2 lanes, each 2 miles wide, separated by a 2-mile buffer zone. That is the corridor through which a significant fraction of the world's energy supply moves every single day, or moved until March 4th. In 2024, approximately 20 million barrels of oil transited the strait daily. That translates to roughly $500 billion in annual energy trade, passing through a gap you could drive across in under 30 minutes. Through 2023 and into 2025, 20% of the world's liquefied natural gas and 25% of all seaborne oil trade passed through that waterway every year. And for 3 countries, Kuwait, Qatar, and Bahrain, the strait is not one of several options. It is the only maritime exit they have. There is no alternate route, no bypass, no workaround. When the strait closes, those countries are landlocked by water. 4 operational pipeline systems exist that could theoretically carry Gulf oil overland and around Iran's choke point. Together, they can manage somewhere between 3.5 and 5.5 million barrels per day. The daily shortfall from a closed strait sits between 14.5 and 16.5 million barrels. There is no infrastructure anywhere on this planet that covers that gap. When Iran shut the strait down, the world didn't wait weeks to feel it. It felt it within days. Oil prices jumped 10 to 13% in the first 72 hours. By early March, crude was trading somewhere around $80 to $82 per barrel. By late March, it crossed $100. At its peak, it reached $114 per barrel, the highest level since the COVID-19 pandemic. The International Energy Agency described it in unusually blunt terms for an institution of that kind as the greatest global energy security challenge in recorded history. Europe was already exposed. Heading into this crisis, the continent was carrying just 30% gas storage capacity after a brutal winter. Dutch TTF gas benchmarks nearly doubled, climbing past 60 euros per megawatt hour by mid-March. The European Central Bank pushed back its planned interest rate cuts. The IMF flagged that every 10% rise in energy prices drives global inflation up by nearly half a percentage point. And the damage didn't stay confined to financial markets. Bangladesh shut universities ahead of schedule. Pakistan and the Philippines moved to 4-day work weeks. Chemical and steel manufacturers across the UK and the EU added energy surcharges of up to 30% on their products. This is what a closed Strait of Hormuz does to the global economy, not in months, in weeks. Here is where most people assume the US Navy simply escorts ships through and the problem is solved. It is nowhere near that simple. Iran's closure strategy is not a single weapon or a single tactic. It is a layered system of overlapping threats, each one designed to complicate the response to the next, and the entire architecture has been built specifically to defeat the kind of power the US Navy is best equipped to deliver. Start with the fast attack boats. The IRGC operates large numbers of small, quick, heavily armed watercraft that move in coordinated swarms. They are inexpensive to produce and inexpensive to replace. They are difficult to track from the air and nearly impossible to neutralize efficiently from large warships without simultaneously exposing those warships to additional dangers. Then there are the mines. The US Defense Intelligence Agency estimated that Iran held over 5,000 naval mines as of its last thorough assessment. Mines can be deployed rapidly from high-speed boats, from submarines, and from positions along the shore. They are cheap, they are covert, they can be placed faster than they can be removed. Once a channel is mined, no number of escort destroyers resolves the situation because the threat is already beneath the surface, invisible and waiting. Air power can hit fast boat staging areas. Air power can strike mine-laying vessels before they release their payload. But air power cannot hold the coastline overlooking the clearing operation. To protect minesweepers while they work, you need to physically control the terrain surrounding them. The islands are named Larak, Keshem, and Abu Musa. They sit inside and around the strait itself. They are not just pieces of land. They are armed positions, radar installations, missile launch sites, surveillance posts with direct line-of-sight coverage over the navigable lanes below. The IRGC has spent years converting them into hardened fortresses, specifically engineered to hold maritime traffic hostage without requiring a single Iranian warship to leave port. Iran's land-based anti-ship missile batteries run along a coastline that is mountainous, heavily fortified, and built around hardened underground infrastructure. On March 17th, US Central Command deployed multiple GBU-72 5,000-pound penetrator munitions against underground missile silos along the Iranian coast. Weapons selected precisely because the targets sat buried under layers of rock and reinforced concrete. Even after those strikes, Iran's arsenal was not finished. By March 5th, Iranian military sources were telling state media the country had already launched over 500 ballistic and naval missiles and nearly 2,000 drones since late February. Analysts observed that Iran appeared to be packing itself, conserving reserves for a longer campaign. Air power can damage the island installations. Air power can collapse a missile silo, but air power cannot occupy Larak. It cannot stop rearming. It cannot guarantee that a position stays neutralized after strike aircraft return to their carriers. Air power destroys, it does not hold. That gap is precisely what Marines are built to fill, and right now they are already on the move. On March 11, 2026, the USS Tripoli departed Okinawa, Japan. It is an America-class amphibious assault ship, 43,745 tons, built for sustained aviation-heavy marine operations at sea. It carries F-35B fighter jets, MV-22B Osprey tiltrotor aircraft, and CH-53E Super Stallion heavy-lift helicopters. Unlike older amphibious platforms, the Tripoli has an enlarged hangar deck, expanded aviation fuel capacity, and no well deck. Every design decision on that ship points toward continuous air operations. Embarked aboard it, the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit, approximately 2,200 Marines, the only continuously forward-deployed MEU permanently stationed in Japan. Pentagon officials simultaneously announced 2,500 additional Marines en route, following aboard the USS Boxer carrying the 11th Marine Expeditionary Unit out of California, another 2,500 Marines. Supporting vessels include the USS New Orleans and USS Rushmore. Combined Marine combat power converging on the theater between 4,700 and 5,000 personnel. A Marine Expeditionary Unit is organized around the Marine Air-Ground Task Force. 4 fully integrated components: a command element, a ground combat element, an aviation combat element, and a logistics combat element. The entire structure is designed to function independently from the sea. According to Marine Corps veteran Jonathan Hackett, a counterintelligence specialist who analyzed the deployment, the MEU is a self-sufficient combat force that does not depend on external support to carry out its expeditionary amphibious operations. This is not one mission, it is 4 running at the same time. The first is coastal assault and island seizure. The 31st MEU's aviation-heavy configuration, Sea Stallions, Ospreys, Viper attack helicopters, gives commanders the ability to conduct air assault operations onto terrain that cannot be reached by sea under fire. The second is mine countermeasure support. Marines lock down nearby coastlines so minesweepers can work without Iran reseeding cleared channels from the shore. Without that ground security layer, mine clearing proceeds under constant, unacceptable risk. The third is visit, board, search, and seizure operations. Marines launch from the Tripoli, New Orleans, and Rushmore to intercept vessels suspected of transporting mines or weapons. The MV-22B Osprey allows teams to insert from standoff distances across a wide maritime area, mirroring approaches used during Operation Praying Mantis in 1988 and Operation Iraqi Freedom in 2003. The fourth is seizure of strategic infrastructure. Karg Island processes approximately 90% of all Iranian oil exports. A battalion landing team, up to 550 personnel, is specifically the kind of force capable of seizing and holding that type of infrastructure, creating a direct economic bargaining chip that no airstrike on a dispersed missile battery can replicate. On March 19th, Central Command launched the formal aerial campaign targeting Iranian naval assets. CENTCOM reported striking over 11,000 targets inside Iran since late February. On March 26th, Israel announced it had eliminated IRGC naval commander Eliezer Tangsiri, the officer directly overseeing the blockade. Iran replaced him within 48 hours. Iran is not backing down. By March 27th, the IRGC was still blocking vessels from countries it had publicly announced would be permitted passage. The United States submitted a 15-point proposal through Pakistani intermediaries on March 24th. Dismantle the nuclear program, end enrichment, surrender the stockpile, restrict missiles, end proxy support, guarantee freedom of navigation. Iran rejected it. The White House signaled further military action on March 25th. 22 countries have signed onto a statement backing efforts to secure the strait. Most NATO allies have declined direct involvement. The Navy can dominate open water. It can sink ships, launch strikes, and sustain air superiority over the Persian Gulf for as long as required. That is not the question, but naval dominance by itself cannot reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Iran's strategy was never built to contest the US Navy in open ocean. It was built to make the strait too costly to transit through, using terrain, mines, land-based missiles buried under rock and concrete, and cheap asymmetric tools engineered specifically to impose costs that conventional naval strength cannot efficiently erase. Every layer of that strategy leads to the same answer. Someone has to take the ground. That is not a destroyer mission. That is not a carrier strike group mission. That is a marine mission. And that is exactly why nearly 5,000 Marines are currently making their way toward one of the most dangerous and consequential stretches of water on Earth. Because the most powerful Navy in history still needs boots on the ground to reopen a waterway that controls a fifth of the world's energy supply. The question is not whether they can get it done. The question is what the cost of finding out will be.